I had a 12-gauge shotgun pointed at the sky. Linda was screaming about federal law, and a flaming drone crashed into the side of my barn all because the HOA thought they could hijack my ranch for their shiny new solar panels. What they didn't know was that my great-grandfather had prepared for this moment 100 years ago, and it was about to blow up in their faces. You're probably thinking, how do you pull that off legally? And how did she not see it coming? That's the best part. Linda didn't notice because, like most self-proclaimed suburban overlords with a law degree from social media and an ego fueled by HOA bylaws, she assumed everyone outside her gated community was just a yokel with a shotgun and a cow named Daisy. To be fair, I do have a shotgun. Her name's Betty, and I haven't had a cow named Daisy since the 90s. But what I also have is 140 acres of legally protected, strategically defended, and wildly underestimated family land, plus plenty of time to use it. This all started 3 weeks before that drone took a nosedive into my siding, sparking a bar fire that took me and my cousin Jake 2 hours to put out with wet feed sacks. That morning, I spotted a crew in safety vests surveying near my eastern fence line. I rolled up on my ATV and asked what they were doing. One guy grinned like I'd handed him a latte and said, "Just prepping the install site for the solar expansion, sir. Should be done in a week or 2. I blinked. Expansion for what? He glanced at his clipboard. For the HOA solar grid. New Green Initiative. I stared at him, then at the orange boundary markers and pink flags planted 20 feet onto my property. I wasn't in the mood to start a fight that early, so I nodded, said I'd be back, and drove to the HOA office. Let's be clear, I don't live in the HOA. My ranch borders the eastern edge of Oak Grove Estates, a sprawl of overpriced stucco boxes with matching mailboxes and a fetish for conformity that makes a monastery look like a rave. Their HOA formed a decade ago, long after I inherited the ranch. They've tried nibbling at my land before, citing border discrepancies or historical variances. I shut that down fast with boundary posts and legal filings, but they'd never pulled anything this bold. Inside the HOA office, I met Linda herself, technically named Marjorie, but she introduced herself as HOA president and said, "We'll need your signature to finalize our energy-sharing plan." She smiled like we were swapping pie recipes. I said, "No," she blinked. I elaborated, "No, you're not installing anything on my land." "No, you didn't ask?" "No, I won't sign." She frowned like I'd spat in her coffee. "Mr. Thompson, you don't understand the opportunity. This is sustainable energy for the whole community." I told her my barn and land weren't part of her community. She did that slow inhale people do in movies before saying something dumb. The HOA board voted. "We have the right to use adjacent unzoned land for community benefit. You'll barely notice." I replied, "Funny, because I barely noticed it's yours." What followed was a storm of emails, flyers, and a glossy pamphlet with my eastern field photoshopped to show gleaming solar panels. They mailed it to every house in Oak Grove and posted it on their private Facebook group, which I wasn't invited to. They held informational sessions and took selfies in front of my hayfield, calling it a future solar innovation zone. I laughed at first, but then they brought in equipment rucks, cement posts, wiring. They installed junction boxes inside my fence line. That's when I stopped laughing. I sent a cease and desist letter through my lawyer, Evelyn, who's 73, wears paisley dresses, and once threatened to sue the county for planting a tree too close to her mailbox. Linda ignored it. Instead, she started flying a drone over my ranch every morning and evening. At first, I thought it was a hobby, but then I caught it hovering over my barns, dipping near the livestock pens, even peeking through windows. I checked the HOA's Facebook group with a burner account and found Linda's post, monitoring ongoing encroachments and animal safety hazards. Video documentation in progress. That flying spy had to go. So there I was, Betty aimed skyward. The drone buzzed low, barely 20 feet above my driveway. Linda stood across the property line, phone out, filming, shouting about airspace rights and federal regulations. I smiled, waved, and blew that drone out of the sky like a skeet target. It sparked, spun, and smashed into the barn wall with a satisfying crunch and a puff of smoke. Linda screamed like I'd shot her cat. I turned and walked back to my porch like it was just another Tuesday. She called the FAA. I called Evelyn. What Linda didn't know was that her drone had broken 3 state drone privacy laws, flown over protected livestock zones, and dipped below 50 feet for days. I had footage, timestamps, and a very annoyed alpaca named Rufus to prove it. The FAA wasn't interested in Methy asked for my drone footage and informed me Linda was under investigation for multiple violations. Her perfect HOA resume now had a big red flag. Things got spicier. After the drone crash, I headed to the far east end of the ranch, past the creek bed where the survey markers first appeared. My granddad used to say, "If anyone tries to steal from us, check the iron." I thought he meant a gun. He didn't. After an hour with a metal detector, I found it, a rusted cast iron plaque, half buried and anchored in stone. I brushed off the dirt and read the inscription. Linda and her HOA hadn't just crossed a linethid-triggered illegal trap set a century ago. The plaque, dated 1923, outlined a private land covenant filed with the county. Any construction on the eastern perimeter of the Thompson Ranch without written consent triggered automatic forfeiture proceedings, rendering the construction and the land beneath it subject to claim by the Thompson family. It even listed survey coordinates and cited easement law. I laughed so hard I startled a crow. My great-grandfather, a ornery old coot who loved whiskey and hated land grabbers, had sued a railroad company for crossing his fields. They settled, giving him the right to file this covenant out of pure spite. 100 years later, it was about to ruin Linda's day. I called Evelyn and read her the plaque. She told me to stay put and showed up with a legal pad, reading glasses, and gardening gloves. We spent hours pulling county records. The covenant was valid, filed, stamped, and never challenged. Evelyn grinned like she'd won the lottery. "They're screwed," she said. "They didn't run a title check before trenching." Classic HOAlisy and arrogant. I asked what was next. She didn't look up from her notes. "We send a certified letter, let them dig deeper, then prep for full forfeiture." The next day, the HOA got the letter. I pictured Linda opening it over her almond milk latte, expecting a complaint about lawn ornaments. Instead, she got a notice of violation under Covenant 1923-41A, demanding they cease operations and dismantle equipment or risk a land claim lawsuit. She didn't back down. Instead, she posted a rant in the HOA newsletter, accusing me of rural intimidation, anti-green sentiment, and weaponizing outdated documents. Evelyn laughed so hard she nearly spilled her tea. "Let her dig," she said. "The deeper the hole, the more dirt we'll have." And dig she did. The HOA sent more workers, more panels, and dug trenches deeper into my soil. I filmed it all, even strapping a GoPro to Rufus the alpaca as he grazed near the grid. They ignored every warning. Linda sent a smug email with a winking emoji. "Hope you enjoy the shade." Then came another drone bigger, fancier, probably with night vision. I didn't shoot it. I waved, knowing my roof and barn cams were catching it flying under 50 feet, buzzing my house, and spooking the horses. All time-stamped, all saved. The FAA called back, unsurprised. Linda's drone had violated state privacy laws, federal aviation rules, and agricultural zone regulations by filming livestock and people. She'd posted the footage on Facebook with hashtags like HOA United and This Is Our Land. The FAA guy chuckled, saying she faced fines, license revocation, and possible criminal charges, especially after the drone filmed my niece reading on the porch. I thanked him, picturing Linda explaining that in court. Then the HOA board sent a letter not from Linda, but from members starting to question her. The solar grid was over budget, neighbors complained about noise, and they faced a lawsuit. The letter asked for a community resolution. I framed it and hung it in the barn. That evening, I spotted new surveyor not solar crew, but a land company scanning the trenches, marking in chalk. One was on the phone. "Yeah, it's beyond the boundary." That's a problem. The HOA was realizing their mistake. They built on land my family had locked up since the 1920s, and under the covenant, everything they built could be mine. The town meeting was supposed to be routine damage control. Linda planned to cry on cue and pitch, moving forward as neighbors. Instead, it was a legal ambush. The community center was packed. Oak Grove had never seen this many residents without free food. Linda stood up front with her clipboard and fake pearls, acting like she was starring in a political drama. "There have been rumors about our solar project," she began. "I'd like to clarify legal misunderstandings and reaffirm our commitment to progress." She didn't mention trespassing, drone laws, or the century-old covenant about to derail her. Then she held up my cease and desist letter like it was evidence of a crime. "This is the obstructionism we faced. Some cling to outdated claims to hold back the community. I stood up. People turned, phones out. Evelyn, in her sweater and sensible shoes, whispered, "Give him hell." I walked to the front and said, "I sent that letter because you built on my land without permission. That's trespass. You didn't check the title, didn't consult a surveyor, and ignored 5 generations of my family's ownership. Your solar grid sits on a 1923 covenant that says any unauthorized construction defaults to my family. You didn't just break the law, you gifted me your infrastructure." The room shifted. Someone shouted, "Is that true?" Another added, "She never mentioned that." Linda's face turned red. "That covenant's ancient," she stammered. "It's not enforceable." I held up the county filing. Filed, stamped, and valid. You built on my land, and now I can claim it all. Silence hit like a magic trick gone wrong. A woman with a dog-themed phone case asked, "Linda, is this true?" Linda mumbled about legal review, but the room had turned. By morning, my speech was on the Oak Grove Facebook group and the local subreddit. The clip of Linda waving my letter while I outlined her legal disaster went viral. Comments were brutal. "She can't even read a property line but organize the block party?" Residents messaged me, apologizing, asking about refunds for HOA dues. One guy wanted Evelyn's number. Linda posted a statement blaming a smear campaign by an anti-environmentalist landowner, citing her drone footage as evidence of harassment. That footage was now with the FAA, who were very interested in the part where her drone zoomed in on my niece. The HOA board tried a no-confidence vote, but Linda preempted it with a letter claiming she'd stepped down due to emotional toll. No one bought it. They voted her out. A board member, Tom, called me, sounding like he'd lost his car keys in his own pocket. He asked for a good-faith meeting. I said I'd think about it. Evelyn was already prepping a lawsuit for damages, legal fees, and restoration costs. The covenant gave us forfeiture rights, and the solar grid was $1 million liability. Then came the kicker. A county assessor called, saying someone from the HOA Linda had filed a zoning variance claiming my land was HOA-owned communal property via donation. That wasn't just a lie, it was fraud. She tried to erase my ownership. I thanked the assessor and hung up. The FAA, the lawsuit, the meeting, those were just the prelude. Linda had crossed a line no bylaw could fix. She'd walked into a trap my great-grandfather set a century ago, blinded by her own arrogance. I could have settled early, taken a payoff, or let it slide. But this was about principle, about entitlement, about someone thinking they could erase a legacy with a form and a drone. So I let the trap spring. By week's end, I had everything. The covenant, video of the trespass, FAA statements, and a notarized transcript of the assessor's call confirming Linda's fraud. Evelyn filed the lawsuit like she was lighting a bonfire: restitution for damage, land forfeiture, recovery of infrastructure, punitive damages for drone violations, and penalties for attempted fraud. The filing demanded just shy of 7 figures. Linda's final Facebook post accused me of being a land-grabbing vigilante and claimed Big Oil was behind it. Her supporters vanished. No one wanted to be a co-defendant. The HOA disbanded the solar committee. Contractors pulled out, dismantling panels, wiring, and trenches. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand, as they undid their mess. Some workers gave me thumbs up. One said he hoped I'd keep the system. I told him that was the plan. At the hearings, Linda played the victim, claiming bad maps and no intent to harm. But her email showed she'd told surveyors to ignore my complaints and push forward. The judge wasn't impressed, especially when he saw the drone footage of my niece. He paused the video and asked Linda to explain zooming in on a teenager. She mumbled about safety inspections. The courtroom laughed. The judge didn't. She faced heavy fines, FAA penalties, and a county ban on filing zoning projects. She was ordered to write a formal apology to my family for violating the covenant and attempting fraud. I didn't care about the apology. I liked that she'd have to write it. The court ruled in my favor. The eastern strip of HOA land where the grid stood was deeded to me, a couple of acres, but mine, with cleared trenching and solar-ready infrastructure. I built a barn on it, not because I needed one, but because I could. Jake, a decent welder but a better artist, painted a mural on it, a cartoon drone exploding in flames with "Property of the Thompson Ranch" in 10-foot letters. I called it the Trap Barn. Subtle, but Linda got the joke. She sold her house at a loss and moved 2 towns over, trying to join another HOA board. Her reputation followed her. Neighbors thanked me. One brought a pie, saying the ordeal exposed the HOA's toxicity. Some talked about dissolving it. I said that was their call. I had done my part. I claimed the solar panels through a salvage clause, hooked them up to power the barn and house, and sold excess energy back to the grid. Irony pays better with a rebate. On a windy Tuesday, Evelyn and I sat on the porch as the last workers left, leaving fresh soil, a new fence, and my solar panels glinting in the sun. She was knitting a scarf that looked like it was attacking a badger. "You could have just yelled at them," she said. I sipped my coffee. Where's the fun in that? The ranch was quiet again, every inch mine, earned through patience, planning, and generational spite. They thought they were building progress, but they triggered a century-old reminder. Some land doesn't take kindly to being claimed, and some families don't forget.